Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Hi, Ellen.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Thanks.
Test.
Nanita, I'm getting some messages from members of the community that says host has another meeting in progress when folks are trying to join. Do we have another link for folks to join tonight than our usual one?
If you're talking, you're on mute.
Julie, could you hear me now?
I can hear you. Yeah, I was just trying to say to Nanita, if she was talking, she's on mute.
Mm.
Can you all hear me again?
Yep, we can hear you well, Nanita.
Okay, thanks.
I was asking, I had a member of the community text me saying that the webinar link on the DOTI website that says host has another meeting in progress. Should we give folks the public a different link tonight if they want to listen in?
Yes. Ellen, I will send you that link, okay?
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thanks, Anita.
Francisco, are you there?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Thank you. Ellen, just let me know when we can start.
Yeah, I'd say go ahead and take it away, Francisco and Nanita, if you want to start with the announcement about interpretation.
Okay, Francisco, you're on.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Francisco Picado. I'm from Language Access LLC, and I am part of your interpreter team this afternoon. DOTI, like most meetings organized by the city, organizes interpretation as part of an effort to reach as many folks as possible in the community and to get the broadest participation possible. If you have not gotten a chance to use this service before, if you look at the bottom part of your screen, click on their interpretation icon on the right side of your screen and select the language of your choice. Bienvenidos a todos esta tarde. Mi nombre es Francisco de Language Access LLC y estoy aquí como parte de su equipo de interpretación. Para aquellos de ustedes que no han disfrutado de o no han tenido la oportunidad de utilizar este servicio antes, puede pulsar en el globito en la parte inferior derecha de su pantalla y seleccionar el idioma de su preferencia. DOTI ofrece este esfuerzo como parte de su campaña por conectarse con la mayor cantidad posible de miembros de la comunidad. Muchas gracias. Thank you, Alan.
Great. Thank you so much, Francisco, for welcoming everybody and making this accessible. So for those of you just joining, we're using, I think, from what I understand, we're using a new webinar link. Nanita has put that new link in the chat. I'll go ahead and repaste it here. And I think we might have a few board members that might be trying to go to that other chat as well. So we'll try to email folks that as well. Gary, would you like to run through roll call quickly here, and we can see who's here, and I'll try to separately email folks so they know where to find us.
Sure. There are a few names I don't recognize, so you can help me out a little bit. Let's start with June Churchill. Is she? I
am here. My term does not officially begin until June 1st, but if you'll let me participate, I'm happy to.
Okay, I'm just going to make note of that. And then Joel Noble.
Good afternoon. I'm observing. It appears that the new link is a meeting, not a webinar. So that's why I'm showing up with everyone, but I'm just observing.
Observing, okay. Very good. But let me go. Lucia, did I see you join? No, not yet.
David, if you don't mind going on mute, we can hear some lovely jazz music in the background.
Yeah. I see Brian Carroll's here. Ian? I don't see Ian yet. Jake and Amy, I see you. Alan, you, Paul. Is Paul on?
Here.
Oh, Paul is here.
Howdy.
Huh, okay, I can't see you for some reason. And Christopher Johnson.
Absent.
Say again?
He's not here with us tonight.
Okay. I see Joe's here. Jamie's on board. Elaine's on board. Jonathan did you get on? I don't see Jonathan.
Jonathan's been struggling with
Julie,
link.
I see Julie and Tinsley. And I did see Lucia just joined us. And who is David? David?
Gary, there's going to be a lot of unfamiliar people in the board meeting. This is not a webinar format. It looks like we're just in a regular Zoom meeting. So you can go ahead and ignore any names you don't recognize.
All right, very well then. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 12. We have 12 attending, which is not quite a quorum yet. Well, there's Jonathan. Make that 13. Way to go, man. We have quorum.
Awesome. Thanks, Gary. And forgive my tardiness. I was one of the ones struggling with the link. I had 3 calendar invites and was clicking, had the wrong link on it. But all right. with the roll call, thank you, Gary. And then we need to vote to approve meeting minutes. Can I have someone call for a motion to approve the meeting minutes?
So moved.
Seconded by anyone?
Second.
Awesome. All in favor, raise your hand.
Where's the
Awesome.
hand? I raised my hand.
All right. And
Let's see.
any opposed? All right. Aileen and Alan, I'm assuming you're not opposed, just hands up. Okay, cool. All right. With that, we are all set to jump to public comment. Anita, do we have any public comment today?
No, we do not.
Awesome. Nick, do you want to kick us off with a report from DOTI leadership?
Yes, sir. I think Amy's going to be joining us here a little bit later, but got a few items. We're going to do a one of the things we've heard from the committee is a more consolidated events calendar. I know a lot of times I'll throw in links here and there, but luckily our Office of Community Business Engagement has started to pull together, and we're going to expand it. A list of kind of all the upcoming events. Certainly don't feel this won't preclude us from inviting you to the very special events like we did with Broadway and some of those other ones. But I will be a little bit later in this meeting after I'm done. I won't do it while I'm talking. Putting that in the chat. It's a PDF, and any comments or if there's any information. Formatting is not attractive at this point. This is something we're trying to turn around right now, and that will improve on there. But if there's any other bits of information that you think would be helpful, feel free to just reach out to me directly on that. Also, going to put in we had a good legislative update earlier today, specifically around a number of issues that impact the department on there. Certainly is not totally exhaustive. And thankfully, we are getting very close to rehiring a senior legislative affairs person here, and I can't tell you how excited I am about that. But that will be for your information. I'll drop that in the chat as well. And then finally, DME delivers. So this is a kind of an outreach initiative that you're going to see here throughout this year. And there will be likely an event coming up again that you'll be invited to on there. But we are developing a tool that really shows, hey, what's happening in 2024 as far as different infrastructure improvements, really as far as here's what we said we're going to deliver in Denver Moves Everyone, the long range planning on here. And this really is going to be an interactive tool that allows you to see, hey, what's going on in my district? What's being built in my district? What's upcoming on that. And so that will be another link. So it's going to be, once we move in, I'll just be posting links for the rest of this meeting, links and PDFs in here. But I will stop there. I know we have a very robust and exciting discussion, but happy to answer any questions if anything's burning for y'all.
I just want to say that sounds exciting, Nicholas. That's all.
We park our cars in the same garage, Tinsley. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited to be able to share that with y'all and do it in a more organized way. Thank you.
Wonderful.
All right. Thank you very much, Deputy Director Williams. I am also very excited about the calendar. I think it'll be great to have. I would like to adjust our agenda a little bit real quick to accommodate our board member, Jamie Lewis, is also the RTD director for District A, and I know he's got an RTD meeting a little bit later today. We do have some letters that we need to vote on later in the meeting, but Jamie worked really closely on one, and I'd love to give Jamie, Director Lewis, I'm still getting used to your big new role, Jamie, but I'd love to give you the time to introduce your letter.
No need to be formal, please. So the policy committee's been working on a letter concerning the use of cement. As you know, we have the 307 committee working on the ballot issue that was, I think, almost 2 years old now, to repair and to expand our sidewalk network. We're pretty close to presenting that to the city council, and So it looks like we probably will start collecting fees around the 1st of January 2025. But the subject I want to talk about today is the use of cement. This particular project is second only to the airport. If you're not familiar, cement is one of the biggest contributing factors to our air pollution when it's processed. So we just wanted to give some guidelines to DOTI as we enter the development stage of this project to consider some guidelines. So I just wanted to go, I don't know if anybody can pull up that letter. I am not technically acute to being able to do that. So I'm just going to read off the letter verbatim here. It basically says, soon the city of Denver will be taking on the responsibility to build out and repair existing sidewalks. This is a monumental task that will take about a decade to bring sidewalks in compliance with local and federal standards. Contractors providing materials for pavement will be one of the most important projects the city has taken on in a long time. The policy committee of the DOTI Advisory Board recommends the following guiding principles for materials contracting. Number one is to avoid long-term contracts. Technology for paving is constantly changing in the operations, delivery, and methods of creating the product. For example, materials used to create pavement have changed over the last couple of years to include recycled plastics, recyclables, and other materials that are more environmentally sensitive. We recommend that the city avoid long-term contracts that might prohibit them from being flexible to switch to other vendors that might be more environmentally advanced in this particular area. The second recommendation is to provide incentives to contractors that can provide most environmentally sensitive products. As mentioned earlier, the pavement industry is constantly changing, utilizing different modes of delivery, use of alternative paving products like recycled plastic, and use of alternative energies to produce the product. We recommend that the city provide a grading point system that awards points to help decide the best contractor to use. And a few examples of those is rewarding points to contractors that are geographically close to the borders of Denver. As you may know, hauling products outside the metropolitan area would contribute more to our ozone levels. Secondly, contractors using alternative products like recycled plastic, paving materials, and recyclables would score higher. Contractors who have a plan to switch to alternative products would have a preference. Let's say, for example, a contractor in the long-term planning expect to switch over to plastics within 12 to 18 months would be giving an extra point. And points would be awarded to contractors whose vehicles will be upgraded to electric in their long-term planning document. And avoid contractors that fire their products in high populated areas. The last recommendation we give is we recommend that a pilot program be executed within the first 2 years of the start of the program to test new methods in delivery, materials, and methods. As this project progresses, the city will learn from its experience. We suggest a pilot program where new methods could be tested and implemented on a small scale. Identifying best practices as the project grows will help identify changes that can be used in changing, updating, and starting a new contract with contractors. So we have most of our policy board members on the call. So if you have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie. We'll vote on that at the end of the meeting, but I really appreciate you taking the time to go through that for everyone before you have to jump.
Okay. Thank you.
And yeah, if anyone has any questions specifically for Jamie, feel free to ask those now, but I also want to be respectful of the DOTI staff time. So good question. Jamie, do you want us to mark down a proxy vote for you?
Oh, that'd be perfect. Obviously, I think I'd be a yes. Thank you for the consideration.
Yes. Thank you, Lucia, for pointing that out. All right. Thank you so much. All right. With that, I think we are ready to hand it over to the DOTI staff if they're ready. We're a little bit ahead of time, so forgive them. It's my fault if we're a touch early, but we have a very, very exciting update from the DME team, and they've agreed to put a lot of work into this to help us really understand what's going on with dimmer moves, everyone in the budgeting process. So we're really appreciative of their work in getting that together for us.
Jake, do you think it'd actually be okay if I could ask a quick question about the letter?
Sure. We're a few minutes ahead of time, so if you don't mind being quick, June.
Yeah. Were there any calculations, data studies that were used to undergird the recommendations of the letter? If not, that's fine. I'm just wondering sort of what sources you all used to pull the recommendations together.
We really didn't get into any technical aspects of cement creation. We don't feel like, as the policy committee, it's our job to be engineers. So our job is just to basically to provide guardrails on policy, and we expect DOTI to do most of the homework when it comes down to the technical aspects of this recommendation. But I can let anybody else on my on the policy board answer that question if they have any information that they have.
I could pipe in just to, briefly, in that we did do some outside investigation of other activities that are going on. I am associated with a firm that is involved with improving the carbon output of cement in the Minneapolis-St. Paul area, and they have some similar activities going on there. But it's all, and I can tell you this, it's all in the very, very infant stages across the country. And that's why the last paragraph was inserted in the letter, that we start a pilot program if that's economically feasible to help contribute to the overall national picture on using the high carbon footprint cement in our construction.
Yeah, I'd just add, having been in a few conversations with the policy committee about the letter, I think the big thing was we wanted to encourage the sidewalk program to be as sustainable as possible, while also keeping the goal of allowing them to implement as soon as possible. So there was a bit of competing dynamics there. And so there is a bigger percentage of ambiguity than we would normally would like, but we want to give the department plenty of room to both ingest what we put in the letter, as well as stay true to Ordinance 307. If anyone's not familiar with June, she will be joining us as a DOTI member officially next month. So you get a little preview in June today as well. All right. Riley, I believe it's your turn. So sorry about the jumbled order. I know we didn't stick super true to the agenda, but DME and budget, let's go.
Yeah, you're totally okay. And it looks like I can't share my screen. So do you mind, whoever the host is, just bumping me up so that I'm able to do that?
And which of the documents are we going to be going over? I just saw that we got 3. I just want to pull it up on my own screen.
Riley, Julie's referring to the documents you sent over to me and
Got it.
So sorry about the ambiguity there.
Yep. So there was 3 documents that were sent out. Those are just to have as a reference as I'm going through their presentation. One of them describes the different, and we'll talk about this later, the investment categories. What that means is how we allocate our budget into different buckets for transportation. One of them, I think, was just the slide deck. And then the third, I'm forgetting what the third document was that I sent.
The agenda, Riley.
The agenda.
So
there we go. There we go. Perfect. So yeah, if you pull up the reference document, that should be helpful for as I go through this today. So
Thank you.
no problem.
And Riley, you should be co-host now.
Perfect. Yep, it looks like I can share my screen, so I will do that in just a moment. Make sure that that's all. I got that already. Okay, I just want to make sure you all are seeing that you're all seeing my screen and it's in full screen mode and all that other fun stuff.
It is actually not full screen mode, but I am seeing it. I'm just seeing, the slides.
Gotcha.
In PowerPoint. Yeah.
Let me try this one more time. All right, let's try that. How about that? Nothing?
Seeing nothing now at all. Yeah.
Okay.
That's perfect.
Okay, cool. Now we're in business. So just wanted to introduce myself quickly to everyone. I'm Riley Lemie, and I am a city planner with the Transportation and Mobility Planning Division of DOTI. And I wanted to say thank you for letting me join your meeting tonight. We have a really exciting activity plan with you today where we're going to get your feedback on how you would allocate our budget going into the 2025 budget season. And as I think most of you are aware, we have our guiding strategy that's called Denver Moves Everyone. So that's our long-range strategic transportation plan that's guiding our transportation work for our department all the way till 2050. And as a part of that guiding strategy, it helps us set where we need to be in the long run for where we want to be as a city for our transportation system and what we need to do to accomplish that, how we should be investing our budget to meet those goals. And so you'll get a little bit of a taste today on how we make budget decisions, how we have to allocate our limited resources to help achieve those longer range Denver Moves Everyone goals. So today I'm gonna jump in a little bit. I have a little bit of a presentation, and then the rest of this will be very interactive. But just wanted to kind of highlight what we hope to accomplish today, and that is that we have these really exciting tools that have been developed as a part of DME, or Denver Moves Everyone, that help us understand how much funding is required on an annual basis to achieve our transportation infrastructure needs. And that tool also helps us understand what the impact is towards meeting our goals based on how much we allocate into each investment category. So we have the ability now through that tool to answer questions, for example, of if we put in $5 million into the bike program, how many miles of bikeways is that going to help us achieve? If we put in so much money into the paving program, how can we reduce the number of potholes that we have? Or how, if we put in so much towards maintaining bridges, how much of our bridges are going to be maintained in a state of good repair? And that's really exciting because we didn't have a tool like this before, and that's something that's new to us. And we want to share that with you today and help and kind of get our hands dirty and do a deep dive into that tool. And that way it will help you understand how we have to make tough budget decisions as a department, but also we want to hear your feedback and as the DOTI Advisory Board, hear from you how you might allocate that budget. There's going to be some key terms that I'm going to I wanted to throw up today that you might hear me say. So just to go over a couple of these, you might hear me sometimes say investment categories. Really, this is just a fancy way of saying the different buckets of different ways that we spend money to build transportation infrastructure. So you can think of that as like the bike program or the pedestrian program or when we make improvements to bridges or to paving. So when I say investment category, those are just really the different categories or buckets of money that we spend to build out and improve our transportation system. You also sometimes hear me say, and this will be a little bit later in the workshop, so I can repeat this, you'll hear me sometimes say key performance indicators. And that is something that Denver Moves Everyone, our long-range strategic plan, helped us to answer is, what does good look like? We know what our goals are for our transportation system. We know what our vision is that Denver residents have told us is important, but how are we measuring if we're actually getting there? How are we measuring if what we're doing is making a difference? And where do we need to be between now and 2030 and 2040 and 2050? And so you'll sometimes hear me reference those. And then finally, you'll also hear me talk about when we're spending in our capital budget, we're talking about spending money on maintenance dollars, and sometimes we're talking about discretionary funding. Maintenance is basically everything is the pot of money that we have to maintain our transportation system, keep it in a state of good repair. So that's making repairs to bridges as we need to, filling in potholes, replacing signage, striping as we need to. And then discretionary, that's funding that's available to us to make to build new things. So building in a new bike lane or putting in a new bridge, things like that. That's coming from our discretionary funding. So those are just a couple of terms that you might hear me throw around today. And I wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page. But of course, if anyone has any questions at any time, feel free to interrupt, and I'm happy to clarify any of this as I go through this. So just a little bit about what you can expect from me. We'll have the first kind of 20 minutes or so is just going to be me giving a little bit of a presentation. So I want to give an overview of our capital planning process. And then we'll do a deep dive into the new tool that we'll share with you. And then we'll make sure that we'll have some time for a discussion and some questions. And then we really, again, want to get our hands dirty and go into this hands-on exercise where we want to talk to you, demonstrate this tool and get your feedback on how would you allocate our budget towards our different investment categories. So how would you allocate our money towards the pedestrian program or the bicycle program, or to maintaining our existing infrastructure? And then we'll regroup and we will kind of discuss what we came up with, and then we'll do one more activity that's related to that, and then kind of come back again for discussion. Don't pay attention to the times. This is just more to help me make sure I'm keeping myself on track and not going over. So I want to give a little bit of an overview of our capital planning and our budget process here at DOTI as it relates to achieving Denver Moves Everyone. So I think we've touched on this a few times, and I think by now, hopefully everyone is aware of what DME is, but just in case you're not, again, Denver Moves Everyone is our long-range strategic transportation plan that was first developed over a 2-year period, but finalized in 2023, at least the planning process. But it is more than a plan, and it's really guiding the work that we do between now all the way to 2050. And this represents a collective vision for our residents and our stakeholders of what we want our transportation system to be like in the future, going now to over that 30-year period. And how it helps define that vision, or to get us to that vision, to get us to those goals. It defines what types of investments we need to make as a city and as a department, what types of policies and what types of resources are going to be needed to meet our long-term goals. Just as a reminder of what those goals look like. So, what did Denver residents say is important to them? What do we want our future transportation system to be like? This is just a reminder of what that vision is, and then what these goals are. So we want a transportation system that's convenient, has a lot of travel options, it's reliable, that people can get to where they're going safely and securely, and that our transportation system is sustainable, that it will last for generations to come, and without the impacts to our climate, and that we can also work to adapt and mitigate our transportation system to climate change. And then finally, also making sure that as we build out our system, that every neighborhood is connected, and that and people can easily access destinations and get to where they need to go. And then that our transportation system is kept in a good state of repair, that is in a quality and working condition. So one thing I wanted to just kind of highlight before I move on, is that it takes a lot to meet our transportation goals. It's not just infrastructure that we build. So when we put in a new bike lane, when we put in a new transit lane, is part of reaching that goal. But it's also, it's more than that. It's also partnerships. It's also the policies that we put in place and programmatic shifts. So we can build a transit lane, but then we can incentivize more people to use it by providing them with eco passes. That's an example of a programmatic shift. And the reason why I wanted to highlight that again is that it's really all of these things working together that are important towards achieving our long-term goals. What we're really focused on when we're talking about the budget today, though, and kind of how we're funding infrastructure is really just on this infrastructure side. And that's what we're going to be talking about, how we're going to be allocating those dollars to support meeting our infrastructure needs to deliver our long-term DME goals. So as I kind of started off mentioning earlier in the presentation is through DME, through our planning process for coming up with this long-range plan, we developed, or it's a lot more than just a plan. It's also some tools that is given the city and have been given to our department that help us understand what is going to be the cost of getting to our 2050 goals. We know where we're trying to go, but how much is it going to cost to get there, and what is the infrastructure needs that that is going to be required for us to do that. And for the first time, we now know what the costs are associated with that and what we need to do. And that represents what we call our unconstrained needs. And what that means is if we had all the money in the world and money was no issue, this is how much it would cost to meet our needs for each of the investment categories between now and 2050. And these tools that we have also now give us the ability to say, well, this is how much we have to allocate versus what the total need is. So we can say how much of that goal, for example, we're able to achieve. And I'll explain a little bit more about that when we go into the workshop. And as I was mentioning earlier, though, the reality is that we are working in a very constrained environment, and so we don't have all the money in the world, unfortunately, and so we have to take the small budget that we have and constrain that against our limited dollars. And that requires us to make some tough decisions about how we're allocating that money and how we're trying to meet those long-term DME goals that are unconstrained. And one of the things, again, that we'll talk about today is that as part of DME, we have those tools that will help us also forecast how much progress we're able to make based on meeting those annual needs. So this is just kind of an example. Let's take the pedestrian program, for example. If DME estimates that we should be putting in $20 million into it each year, and we only have 10 million to give each year, that it tells us that that tool spits out that we're able to meet 50% of the annual need. So that's just kind of some things that we'll talk about today when we go through this workshop. But again, these are exciting resources that we didn't have prior to doing the strategic plan update that are now really informing how we're making budget decisions and also help us understand where there's might be gaps. I want to talk a little bit about how much funding have we gotten in the past. So, discretionary, you'll hear me sometimes say that again, that's what we have to build new things with. That has remained relatively stagnant. So it typically, for transportation, we usually have about 25 million. That's kind of been the historical average going from 2017 to 2024. And that's, again, what we have to build new infrastructure with. In addition, we have what's called the Special Revenue Fund that averages out to be about 7 million. And that is a funding source that's only 3 years old that comes from the increase of parking fees. And then we have another pot that's purely for doing maintenance. So that's what we do to replace like signage and striping. So when our signs become faded, we need to replace them, when we need to fill potholes, when we need to repair a bridge, for example, make sure that it stays standing, that's coming from that maintenance allocation. And those are things that typically happen on an annual basis. And then we have sources of funding that are coming from that are less frequent, that come from when we do a bond. That typically tends to be a lot more. So that could be anywhere from 200 to 300 million over a 10-year period. We also get state and federal grants that fund our transportation projects too. That might come from DRCOG, that might come from the Federal Transit Administration, for example, is how we're largely funding a lot of the Colfax work. So just wanted to kind of frame for you how and where we get our funding from. What we're going to be talking about today in this exercise is really focused on the things that are to the left, so the annual funding component of this. What you'll see today too is that the amount of funding that we get is only a fraction of what Denver Moves Everyone is saying that we need to achieve our aspirational long-term goals. So this is kind of just a graph that shows how much this is what DME is saying we should be spending in each of these different investment categories to meet the 2050 goal. That's how much we should be spending every year. And it's no secret that we don't have that type of funding. So again, we have to make really tough decisions about how we allocate the funding that we do have to try to make progress on these individual goals. So I'm going to talk about a little bit, you've heard me quite a few times already say the word investment categories, and I'll finally explain a little bit more about what that means. But those are essentially these, again, these different categories of or buckets of how we improve, maintain, or expand our transportation system in Denver. And I'm going to go into a little bit of details about what each of these are. That way it helps you to just understand how we're kind of spend money to improve our transportation system. So I'll go into a little bit of detail on that. And I'm going to start with the first one, which is bicycle and micromobility. This one's probably pretty self-explanatory, but essentially that when we spend money for the bike and micromobility program, that is the work that we do to build new bikeways. That's also anytime that we're upgrading an existing bikeway. So eventually, we've seen a lot of our bikeways that are built in paint and post, and eventually we want to rebuild those with permanent materials. So that would come out of this program. Anything initially when we're building a new bike project and that has signage and wayfinding, that's also included as a part of that program. And then also if we have, like, say, there's a bikeway that is built that's maybe a striped bike lane, and then we want to add protection to it, and we're going to upgrade it and make it more high comfort, that would also come out of this program. Next one is transit. So that's anything that we're doing to expand or improve transit infrastructure, and that includes improving bus stops, transit shelters. That also includes adding new medium and high capacity bus rapid transit corridors like the Colfax project, and then also the bus priority lanes. So those the bus only lanes that you've seen downtown, like on 15th and 17th, that's also included in this. Major multimodal, this one's kind of is a big one, and this is anything that's essentially where it has multiple different components. So say that we're essentially reconstructing a street and we're going to add transit or bicycle or we're going to do major components that are going to reconstruct the intersection. All of that would be considered major multimodal. So, and a really good example that you can see in my picture on the screen is the 16th Street Mall, the Connecting Area project, where we reconstructed the Larimer Bridge and added some a really nice bike facility to that. That would be an example of a major multimodal project. But it's really anything, as you can think of it, as like where we're essentially rebuilding the street. We've started to think about this as we make our sidewalks compliant with 307 on a lot of our busy arterial streets. A lot of those have sidewalks that are not compliant today, and to rebuild those will sort of prompt us to rethink the entire street, and potentially change the curb line. And so a lot of those, as we're kind of rethinking about, or as we're thinking about rebuilding some of those major arterial streets where we would want to then bring them up to complete street design guideline standards. So where they have a nice wide sidewalk, but they also have trees, they also have the amenity zone, bringing that all up would be to that standard would be considered a major multimodal project. And then multimodal system planning and evaluation. So that's a couple of different things. One is like anytime that we're doing a citywide study, such as Denver Moves Everyone, or an update to our bike network, and we're taking a look at the entire transportation system as a whole, and we're and that, this is largely the work that I do since I'm a city planner, falls under this category. Another thing that this work does is also developing concepts for projects. So we might have in a plan, for example, that says to make a street more walkable. Well, we know that we can't go design a more walkable street just based on that recommendation alone. We also have to we have to use a public process where we might take a couple of different concepts that where we would share with the public a particular design. A really great example, again, that I'm going to use for this is the West Colfax Pedestrian and Transit Project that I and a few of my colleagues led in the west part of Denver, where we didn't know exactly what the project was going to be going into it. We knew that we wanted to make some pedestrian improvements, but then as the project kind of became more defined as we were going along. We had multiple different public meetings, and the more that project got carried through the planning process, the more defined that project became, where we actually knew, exactly what we were constructing as a part of that. So the reason why I explain all of that is this is an important component of major multimodal projects, is developing and defining what the project is through a public process. And again, that it's essentially getting a project ready so that way we can hand it to the engineering group and then it goes into design. So before a project ever begins design or engineering, there's a planning process where we take that to concept development, determine what it is, again, that is included as a part of that project. And this is really important to note because projects to be eligible, these major multimodal projects I talked about on the last screen, these are really expensive projects, as you can see. And there's, as we kind of estimated, there's $140 million annual need to be able to make the kind of what DME estimates is the need to be able to hit our 2050 goal, and that's a lot. So we typically rely on outside funding sources for these, whether that be a bond or a state or federal grant. And to be eligible for a state or federal grant, or to be eligible for a bond project, these projects have to already have planning completed. So we can't fund planning or the planning or concept development of a project in a bond or through a state or federal grant. That work has to already be done before it to be eligible. And so we do that work again here, and that's why you're seeing that 3.1 or that $3 million annual need. That's essentially what we ask for in our discretionary money, so that way we can do the planning work that's needed, use our city dollars to do that, and then make those projects eligible for those more expensive projects eligible for state or federal grants. And then I'll go through these quickly, but pedestrian crossings, that's the wayfinding, as well as improving whether that's a marked crosswalk or a signalized crossing like the one that you see here, that you push the button and it lets you get across the street. You'll see that this does not include sidewalks under the pedestrian category, and that's because that's being handled separately through 307. Neighborhood infrastructure, essentially this means traffic calming. And while we don't at the moment have a dedicated source for traffic calming. We would, as a department, would like to have the ability to be more proactive about this, so that rather than kind of handling these through 311 as we have in the past, that we can take a more proactive approach to traffic calming. And so that would be things like the traffic circles or speed cushions or things like that that help to slow down vehicles on local and neighborhood streets. So that's what this category is. And then system operations, I don't have a picture for that one. That one's a little hard to find a picture for, but essentially that is the technology that we have, all the fiber that's underground that allows our transportation system to talk to each other. So we have, for example, we have what's called transit signal priority, which means that buses can communicate with signals, so that if there's a bus coming, the light will stay green longer so that a bus can get through it. So that communication that's happening that allows different modes of travel to be able to talk to each other, that is being funded through what's called our fiber and technology network. And that's all the system operations category. And then curbside and parking, there's a couple of different things that are under this. So that's like our paying for our city-owned parking garages, but this is also basically anything that's kind of below the curb that is providing a curbside use. So it's not just vehicle parking, but it's also bike parking. So bike parking for bikes and scooters, even charging. Also, the maintenance that it's required for us to keep our pay stations in good working order and to replace those as needed. So that's why you'll see there's like a maintenance category and then an expand and improve category as well. And then for the next one, you'll see again, there's kind of both things. So traffic signals and intersection infrastructure, that is our traffic lights. So some of these, there's two different categories. One's expand and improve, one's maintenance. This is really to put up new signals when one is warranted. So putting up a new signal where one does not exist. Putting up a new pedestrian hawk signal. So those are those where you push the button and then it's a red flashing light that requires vehicles to come to a stop. And then say we're upgrading a signal. So say it's an existing signal and we want to add like a left turn arrow to it to provide a left turn movement for vehicles and improve safety that way. That is under that category. And then we also have a maintenance bucket. So signals, they have a lifespan, which is not forever, and they have to be replaced. We also know that there's sometimes people unfortunately, they hit our traffic signals, and then we have to make emergency repairs. And then also we have really old traffic signals in some parts of the city that are the span wire ones, and we need to upgrade those so that we rebuild our signals. That's what's coming out of this maintenance bucket for traffic signals. And the rest of these are kind of purely under the maintenance category. And so these are things that we do to the stuff that's already on the ground, and we do these different activities to keep our transportation system in a state of good repair. So I'll go over these quickly. Paving is pretty self-explanatory. That's the paving program and what we do to repair and repave our streets every year. And what you'll see in here under this, you'll see a KPI that's at the bottom of this. This is saying what does good look like for each of these. And just in the interest of time, I won't go through these, but just note that that's on the right hand on my screen. Next one is alleys. So this is, again, self-explanatory, but it's taking the existing alleys that we have and repairing them as needed, and also repaving them. So we have two types of alleys. Sometimes some of them are concrete, some of them are pavement, and then either reconstructing them as needed or repairing the pavement ones as needed. In signage, that is, think of any sign that we have that is in our public right of way. So that's everything from the traffic signs to street signs to the bike wayfinding signs, any type of signage. And the goal is to replace those. Those don't last forever. We get graffiti on them sometimes, or the sun hits them and then they fade. And so kind of the what good looks like for that is trying to replace all of our signs every 15 years. And the cost that you're seeing here is the 4.9 is what it would cost to do that essentially. And then pavement markings, that's also, again, that's our marked crosswalks. That is the striping on the street that separates the lanes. That is once a bikeway has been installed, the different pavement markings that mark out the bike lanes. That is replacing those. And again, I think as anyone has seen, that those pavement markings definitely don't last forever, especially in a city like Denver where it snows and the snow plows can eat those up. So again, those have a need to be replaced. And so that's the cost associated with kind of keeping that into a good, pavement markings in a good condition and replacing those on an annual basis. And then this one's sort of a strange one, so I just wanted to explain this. Really what this is saying is anytime that you see a median or a curb like this one here that has a gutter, you've probably seen in parts of our city where these get chipped away or sometimes these get damaged. And so this is really to maintain these. It's to maintain the curb line, the medians, any traffic islands that we might have, really to maintain them and repair them as needed and keep those into a state of good repair. What's also included in this is installing curb ramps, which is something that we're required to do. So making sure that all of our curb ramps or intersections in the city are ADA compliant. And so that's what we're required to do there. So you'll see that. And then streetlights, again, most of our streetlights, especially the pedestrian ones, are actually owned and maintained by Excel. So that's the utility provider. But there are a few that are city owned. So that's why you'll see that that's like only 100,000. That is the annual need for that. Again, that's just because most of that's responsibility of Excel. And then finally, which I think I have two more, bridge maintenance. So again, bridges, they have a life cycle. They don't last forever, but we can do things to make sure that our bridges do last a long time, that they meet their expected life. And then every once in a while, bridges have to be completely reconstructed and replaced. And so that's what you're seeing in here. And that's why that has a pretty hefty price tag in terms of it. We do actually have a lot of bridges in the city and it's a pretty hefty price tag to keep those in a state of good repair and perform the annual maintenance that's needed for that. And then this last one is protective barriers, which sounds kind of funny, but really what this is think about all of the different things that we use to separate out different modal uses in the city. So the bollards that you can see here, this is an example on the 16th Street Mall, bollards that are used here to separate out the bus and bike lane from general purpose traffic, and then the curb stops that are also used as a part of that. That's again just, we know that those things get hit and that they have there's a cost to maintain them and replace them over their life cycle until we have the funding to replace them with more permanent materials. And so this is kind of, again, keeping those things in a state of good repair. So before I go, I know I just spoke a lot and went into a lot of detail. So before I go in, start moving into the exercise with you all, I just wanted to pause and see if there was any questions or anything that I can help clarify. And Nick, I see you had your hand up first. So.
Thank you, Riley. And this may be super premature, but you know how paranoid I am. So as you remember, as we've discussed budget in previous years, the frustration is that we can't really share with you what the budget is until the budget is public. And by the time the budget is public, it's pretty much baked on there, leaving you all with very little room to provide your charter authority of advising us on the budget. So I just want to be super clear that we're able to do this because the numbers that you see, like the target numbers that you see, are sample numbers. These are not budget numbers. We don't know that those numbers will come out, I think later in this month or early next month on there. But just want to be very clear to everyone who is participating and who is watching today, that these numbers, this is for an exercise that will really outline your priorities, but just want to make sure that when you do see a different budget number, it could be way higher, could be lower, definitely will be different on there, just that you're not confused about what we did with this exercise. This really is about your priorities and really allocating your priorities, but do understand that we will see a different budget number on there, and certainly we'll share all that information as it becomes public. Just wanted to make that one disclaimer, and I'll go back off camera now.
Thanks, Nick. And then Tinsley, I see you had your hand up too.
Yeah, so I guess the only thing, and I guess maybe a lot of us will have the same question, so I'm just going to ask it. With budget allocating, it's really important to look at the need from each of the communities, and I feel like some of these numbers, just in my opinion, could be shaved in different ways, and I guess that's why we're doing this exercise. But based on like feedback that you have gotten from the community, and I mean, board members, please feel free to chime in on this. But what I guess what I'm asking is, are the numbers severely accurate to the point where it's like the maximum that you need? Or is it just like what you can spend? I guess am I making sense with that? I hope.
Yeah, great question. So the numbers that you've seen kind of as I've gone through some of the previous slides, that's showing what the total need is. So, and that's, if we added up everything that essentially the community need, what we've thought of, that's a total need. And then what we know is that our budget is going to be only a fraction of the total need, and that's why it's important for us to prioritize our work. And then this is going to be kind of a very high level look at the budget, but then that's where the DME also comes in, because then when we start to think about, okay, let's say that we have $10 million to make pedestrian improvements, where in the city are we going to make those pedestrian improvements? That's where DME also comes in, because we have tools that help us to determine where in the city there's the greatest need and where we should really be prioritizing our resources to meet the community needs. So a little bit more to come on that, but wanted to
I
just
did make sense.
caveat
I'm
that.
glad.
Yep, for sure. And let's see, Aileen and then Alan.
Okay, so just to be crystal clear, I did the quick math, and you said $606 million annually to implement DME unconstrained, and that's the unconstrained budget.
Yep.
And then we're currently budgeting approximately $85 million annually.
Yep, and that's based on kind of a sample number of what we estimate we have available. The 606 million is, if we, in a perfect world, if money grew on trees and we had all the money in the world, but yeah, and as I was mentioning,
there's like a delta of
a lot,
550, a lot of money. Okay, just to make sure everyone is clear that we are dealing with a ginormous difference. And then the other question was on the, oh gosh, what was that name of that document? Somebody else just told me about it in the chat, and I was looking at it. That asset, the
funding levels and asset descriptions.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so the green column in that document, is that, I think it is, but I want to just get clarification. Is that the difference between what is currently generally allocated in that area versus that's the percentage of what is currently allocated in that area versus what DME unconstrained would like to have?
Yeah, let me pull that up real quick, just so I can make sure I've got the right thing up. Correct. So in the green where it says total annual need, that's essentially saying what DME says we should spend on an annual basis, and then in the other columns, like the color columns, that's what we've got to spend. Go ahead.
We didn't jump to the PDF with you.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't actually sharing my screen. I was just.
Oh, okay, no worries. Sorry.
We can't see your Outlook, just so you know. I don't know if you meant to do that.
No worries. There we go.
I'm not screenshotting that, so.
Yeah, no worries. Nothing to hide on there, but yeah. So I'll actually pull this up when we're going through the
Okay.
a demo of the tool, and I'll kind of explain what some of the different numbers mean. So yeah, thanks, Aileen.
Okay, thanks.
No problem. And then Alan, and I think you had your hand up, and Joe, I see you had yours as well.
Yeah, thanks, Riley. So as we think about this, and maybe this is something that we take offline down the road, but a few questions I've had from folks is around like, hey, major multimodal products is kind of a broad term. It could be I-25 and Broadway, or it could be the 16th Street Mall, right? Very different kinds of things that people might have different interpretations of what fulfills Denver Moves Everyone goals.
Right.
Are we going to see like a 6-year plan today, or somewhere, and we can take it offline and grab like a 6-year document of seeing what kind of projects are on the menu, so to speak, for the future, to help folks better understand kind of what that might mean from a practical standpoint?
Yeah, great question. So we don't have right now sort of today's exercise is really just focusing on the buckets themselves, but then that is kind of what Nick spoke to earlier. Is what we're working to do next is have a shareable map that has our 6-year capital program. And so it's kind of saying, okay, let's take the major multimodal bucket, for example, and then you'll be able to see how we're planning to fill that bucket. And that's based on projects that score well through DME. So the projects that we know have a big impact on our DME. DME is saying will have a big impact towards meeting our safety goal or meeting our sustainability or mobility goals. And you'll be able to see what's kind of planned on that. And that's what's coming in the next month or so.
Great, that's super helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. And then Joe and Jonathan.
Yeah, I had a question. First of all, I really liked the presentation. It was very well done. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah.
And having to do this on building structures to figure out the budgets and all that, I was just wondering, it would help me a little bit if I knew what $100,000 would buy in each category.
Yeah.
And I know some of them are different, but okay, so you can get, 20 feet of sidewalk and 6 inches of a roadway and stuff like that. Because typically we look for a couple of big projects to really fund, and then what do we have left over and how much can we do? It just makes it a little bit easier. I know you had some of that stuff in there.
For
I don't
sure.
know if it's refined that much.
Yeah, for some of them it's in there, and you'll see this when I pull up the tool. It'll start to show how much bang you get for your buck. So for example, it'll show us how many, if you put in $5 million into the bike program, how many miles of bikeways do you get out of that? For the maintenance one, it was a little more tricky to come up with it. Instead, what we did is we developed an annual need. And so it'll say like, how much should we be spending annually to not have potholes on the street, for example, and then what percentage of the annual need is achieved based on how much we're able to allocate to that. And so we do have that, and that'll get shown on the tool that I'll pull up.
Thanks.
No problem. And then Jonathan.
Hi, yeah, hoping I'm not jumping the gun on some things you'd be answering in the exercise, but 3 questions. They're really short though, so I think they'll be quick.
Yeah.
Just for wayfinding for myself, you had KPIs on each investment category. Much like the numbers are those sample KPIs, or are those actually like these are the real KPIs for these categories?
Those are the real KPIs. So those will say kind of like the DME goal and essentially what DME is saying that we should do, and then the tool will calculate how much of that KPI is reached based on how much we're able to allocate. And even though these are sample numbers, one of the things that this helps us to get an idea of is the proportions. So we can say like, how much did the advisory board recommend that we should put towards the proportion of our budget should go to the pedestrian program or the bike program. And so we'll also have that information from today's activity.
Got it. And then under maintenance division concrete, you mentioned briefly that we are required to build many of those curb ramps. Of course, that unconstrained is going to be the minimum required, but also much more. In that category, as we go through this exercise, is there a minimum allowed in that category because of the legal requirement to do those curb ramps? Is it sort of like, hey, no matter what anybody thinks, we can't go below X million in funding for this one illegally?
Yeah, that one is, I think it's 1,500, and in the tool, it's actually, we put it under pedestrian just to not confuse people, but, and I'll explain, I'll make a note so that I remember to go over this, but it will calculate in the tool for us to say, like, are we meeting the 1,500 that we're required to meet? So, yep.
Great. And then last one, I know we're leaving potential bond funding, potential federal and state funding to the side here.
Yep.
As we're thinking through these categories, are there some of these we might flag as being more likely than other categories to be eligible for or to qualify for federal and state bond fund or just bond funding? I mean, I know in my head the answer is yes. I know we often talk about bridges. I know we that's what the government often comes in with federal money. But I was wondering if that's something we should be thinking about.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a fantastic question. And it speaks to what Aileen brought up earlier, is that you're going to see that there's some pretty hefty gaps as you go through this exercise. And what this helps us to understand is where, as we kind of think about the next bond program, or as we start to think to what are other sources of funding might be, especially when it comes to state and federal grants, this helps us to advise us on where we might be thinking about prioritizing our energy towards getting those bond grants, or where we or those state and federal grants, or where the bond might be able to help come in and fill in some of the gaps, knowing that it's not going to be able to fill in everything, but it might be able to help us, really make some strides on major multimodal or on transit. And so I think that's a good thing, that a good point of discussion that we can kind of gather as we go through this today.
Thank you.
Cool. Well, I'm going to go ahead and share a different screen now, so just bear with me for a few minutes. Originally, we were going to put you into breakout rooms, and unfortunately, I learned that the webinar format does not allow us to do that. So we're just going to do this instead as a whole group instead, but that's totally okay.
And Riley, we switched to Zoom meeting in order to enable the breakout rooms.
Oh, so it does do the breakout rooms. Okay,
yes,
never
and
mind
I have
then.
those ready.
Okay,
Yep.
cool. So scratch that. We are in a second going to go into breakout rooms. But what I'm going to do real quickly is I just wanted to give you all an insight to how the funding tool works. So let me share the screen real quick. And let's see, I think it's this right here. Are you seeing a spreadsheet yet?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. So yeah, this is the. So yeah, I just want to give a quick overview of the tool, and this again has the different, you'll see on the screen, the DOTI investment classes, and I'm going to zoom way in so that way you can all see this a lot better. You'll see the DOTI investment classes. So those are the individual transportation categories that I just described. Something that will help is, like, in the meeting, my colleagues and I are going to be facilitating the breakout rooms, but we can mouse over these, so it'll say what is included in each of these, just in case there's any questions. And then this also has, let me zoom back out, the different colors of money. So we have all of the maintenance colors of money right here. Capital discretionary, again, that's for building new infrastructure. This SRF pot of money, again, that's the money that we get from the parking fee increase. And so what we're asking you to do essentially on this is to pre-program out, or is to help us program out how you would allocate the money across these different funding targets. At the very top here, we have a preset amount. So this is saying that we have, again, these are just a sample, but this is saying that we have $51 million to allocate towards maintenance, and that we have $25 million to allocate from our annual discretionary money, that we have $25 million to sort of play with for building new things. And same thing with, we can also supplement that with this blue pot of money, the SRF funds, that's also for building new infrastructure. What this will tell us, again, that's in the green, is what is the total annual need? And again, this is what DME says in millions. How much should we be spending on each of these categories to meet our long-term goal? And when we can plug a number in, and it'll tell us how much of the annual need is met. So for example, let's say that we decided that we were going to put in a ton of money into transit, and we're going to give that $20 million. That mean that this bumps up, and it will show us that 25% of our annual transit need is met. And it also will spit out a number to the side of the screen. So it'll tell us that with that investment, we're able to build out 78 bus stops, and that we're able to build or design 18% of our transit network each year. That is obviously more than what we have for the entire budget. So, but I'm just kind of doing that to play around with numbers. So that when I spoke to KPIs earlier, that's what these numbers are on the screen. Is it showing what is the annual need, and then what do we get in return? So how many bikeways can we build with that level of investment? What is the number of transit lanes, that kind of thing? And then one other thing I want to say, so going down onto the bottom, speaking to the maintenance, and I think this was kind of going to Jonathan's question earlier, you'll see that this is showing the annual needs. So for example, I mentioned what good looks like is we want to be able to replace all of our signs in the city every 15 years. And so this is showing the total cost of doing that is $5 million. If we invest, let's say, if we invest $3 million into the signage program, we're able to meet 59% of the annual maintenance need. So that's what this tool is telling us in real time of what we're able to meet. One thing I did want to mention really quickly, just so that I don't confuse people, is under the pedestrian crossing one, you'll notice that most of the other ones where we're putting in new infrastructure, like the transit and bike program, those don't have a maintenance category. And that's because the maintenance is done through these other different investment classes. For pedestrian crossings, this $3 million that's right here, that's for doing the curb ramps. So you'll see that update. So for example, right now it has program that we're going to put in $3 million. And then this is saying that with that, that means that 37% of the annual requirement to build out 1,500 curb ramps a year is installed. So, or is met. So we're going to, in just a second, we're going to go into some breakout rooms where we will be kind of facilitating with you how you might, as a group, start to program each of these different investment categories. And we're going to spend, I think, about 20 minutes, I think we have, to go into the break room. So we'll plan to come back at 5:35. Actually, yeah, I think that should work. And the rest of this I can make sure to speed up if I need to. But we'll make sure to come back at 5:35. And one thing that you'll notice on here too is that these amounts are already pre-programmed. This is what a couple of my colleagues and I, when we took a stab at this is what we kind of recommended. But again, this is by no means final. So this is what we want your input on, and to kind of shift these numbers. We thought it'd be helpful to have some numbers already to kind of put in here, so that way it kind of gives us a good starting spot, and then a place to jump off with for having discussion. So I think with that, we're ready to jump into the break rooms, or to the breakout rooms.
All right, everybody should have gotten a prompt to join the breakout rooms, with the exception of folks who will be staying in the main room. So that's breakout room A. Folks, confirm, did you get a prompt?
I haven't seen one, Chris.
I did not get one.
Yep,
I don't see one.
I didn't get one.
We open all rooms. Did folks get that now?
No.
No.
No. And there isn't a
like,
more,
oh,
there isn't a breakout room place.
Got it now.
okay, you got it now. It took us
There
a
it
little
goes.
bit.
Yep.
I got it.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
a little lag on that.
So if we didn't, that just means we're in the
Okay.
main room?
Yeah, so it looks like everyone that's supposed to be in the main room right now is. So we can kind of proceed. And
This will be fun. I love spending other people's money.
yeah, and I'll have my screen pulled up here with that spreadsheet. And I'm hoping that Riley does move over to his group B or C. But if not, we can kind of adjust accordingly. Just to kind of start off, is this Zoom level okay for everyone, or would you like to go in, out?
This works for me.
Okay.
Yep, fine with me.
If anybody has any reservations, definitely let me know. And feel free to direct me to kind of go through these categories. And otherwise, I think I'll leave it up to you all to start the discussion.
I'm just processing these numbers that are here already, so don't have immediate feedback.
Okay, and if I could jump in. So hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer. I am actually the capital finance planner person for DOTI. And so maybe you can share some insight, maybe not. Really just curious to kind of watch your guys' process. We do go through something similar as Riley talked about. And then those constraints are real. So as much as I want to hit those targets, reality gets in the way sometimes, as you can see here.
So my question is, you have a budget for maintenance, but if there's a particularly bad winter and there's like huge potholes all over Broadway, it's not like you can just not do it. And so if you do you have like a reserve, or if you go over maintenance to something else, then get cut?
There is, great question. There is a little bit of a reserve. And also I think as we come up with our numbers, it accounts for like maybe not the full extreme, and that's where that contingency comes in. But we do kind of account for the weather and the way it can mess with things.
But Julie, to your point, that stuff absolutely does come up. And yeah, that is just, I think for the sake of this exercise, probably don't need to, and Riley, I'll defer to you, think about kind of even the contingency on it. But yeah, I mean, you may have seen or seen the sinkhole that appeared at 48th and Dahlia, and that wasn't in our work plan this year on it, but we can't just wait until 2025 on it. And so, yeah, we have to shuffle things around, depending on we will keep a percentage aside for emergencies in some of our different groups on there. But yeah, that is a perpetual challenge.
I had one other question. First of all, I don't even know if this was Denver or RTD, but the GES, that little bus connector that went around Globeville, Swansea, Elyria, was that
Denver? Yep.
So what was that? What category was that? Was that in micromobility, transit, major multimodal? What was that? Neighborhood infrastructure?
It's not. It's in our operating budget. And so it's a different pot of money that is actually not part of this exercise. Yeah.
Two quick questions, if it's all right. First of all, has there been done life cycle costing analysis on this stuff? And also, could you scroll farther down so I could see the bottom of the maintenance chart? Okay. And also, I was starting to build out my own spreadsheet version of this, and I'd love to get like some kind of copy so that I can noodle with this in my own time. One thing I did notice is that maintenance program annual needs met is higher for street maintenance and paving than it is for pedestrian crossings. I wonder if maybe we could figure out sort of, perhaps pulling like $1 million out of street maintenance division concrete and maybe $1 million out of paving and throwing it into the pedestrian crossings and seeing how that would rebalance things.
You've come to the right place, June. I think that's what we're trying to get at with this exercise is, what does the advisory board think is the proper balance for all of these things, including those maintenance?
And I will say, I'm not officially on the advisory board until June 1st, but you brought the budget stuff to me, and I can't help but intercede.
Of course.
Yeah.
One thing to think about with ped crossings is the scale of maintenance for them too is likely smaller than that of paving. And I'm not trying to sway one way or the other, but if we think about the number of miles paving or the number of crossings we're having to maintain and how long they last. So just there are some things. And that's that life cycle costume that you talked about. And I don't have that info. It has been done. I typically am on the capital planning side, not so much the maintenance.
Do you know if there's a possibility to roll some of these functions into each other? So, as the paving crews are coming through, you also redo the curb ramps and you also fix road markings. Like,
yes,
what's sort of the cost efficiencies that are there?
I can't actually tell you, but I know that that is done on these projects. I believe typically curb ramps are concrete and done before, and then paving comes in after, and then the striping comes in after that. But it is costed out the most efficient way that we can.
And of course, this is a super simplified exercise, really, to get at those priorities on that. Those things have to happen at sometimes, throughout the year, June, and hopefully to make things stretch on there. For today's exercise, really is more about let's get kind of the priorities and those down on there, and then we all get to feel the fun tension of, gosh, I want to spend 50% here, 50% here, and then 50% here, and like, oh dang, we can only do 100%. On here. And so, yeah, those are all things that do happen kind of throughout the year and throughout the budget process. Today's exercise really is that kind of more pared down. What are our priorities? Our being the advisory board.
I also see there's 0 going into protective barriers right now, and it seems like there's a relatively low total annual need. So maybe that's a good cost-effective category to pull some of these additional maintenance dollars into.
And do keep in mind, these are fake numbers.
Yeah.
Massive
I'm curious
raises for deputy managers is what I've got in there.
To clarify, Julie, I mean, and for this breakout room, do we want to move forward with moving $1 million out of paving and street maintenance into that other category, or do you want to kind of discuss that further?
June, I actually don't remember what category you were suggesting moving those dollars to.
I was suggesting moving it into pedestrian crossings, but I think maybe a better split would be moving some into protective barriers as well, to really emphasize that multimodal safety piece.
I would be on board for that. I was also going to say.
Okay, so maybe $1 million each?
$1 million each, yeah.
Okay.
I was going to suggest, although my first reaction otherwise was to move $1 million out of alleys and over to protective barriers. But if we've already filled protective barriers up to about 20% there, I just feel like I guess just personal opinion here. I feel like we can. I know alleys is already only at 33%, a third of its request, but I think more so than many of our like core street paving and other areas here, such as protective barriers. I think alleys can take a loss. They can degrade a little bit and don't have as much of a major impact across the city if the alleys are allowed to degrade a little bit further. And I wouldn't even say degrade. It's sort of like, again, we're looking, this total annual need is the most ideal unconstrained scenario. So I don't think that we would have, it's not like necessarily that the alleys are falling apart here. It's just not pristine alleys everywhere.
Yeah, and I'm being very
group of like where I would suggest pulling some money out of alleys, but I don't know exactly where others might suggest moving it to.
I agree, and I'm always a fan of moving stuff to transit.
Does transit have a maintenance budget requirement?
No.
Okay.
Oh, so we can't cross.
Can't cross lines. Yep.
Oh.
So that maintenance.
What about neighborhood infrastructure? That seems kind of low.
That's actually its full maintenance request. It's already at 0.5. So it's not its full improvements request, but again, we can't cross lines. So pulling out of alleys would necessarily have to go to something that has a yellow box.
Yeah, could you scroll down again? So maybe if we're pulling out of alleys, looking around. I mean, honestly, protective barriers and signs and curbside and parking, I think are maybe sort of the three categories where I put some of that money in to help balance our annual needs a bit more.
I definitely like curbside and parking, especially since it has extremely low capital investment. I know they're different, but at least maintaining what we have or improving what we have a little bit better would help with the fact that we've got very little in the capital SRF there.
And also adding additional pay stations there might result in a net total increase of revenue for the SRF.
For the SRF,
So
yeah.
that's, I mean, actually, yeah. Could we move $1 million out of alleys and into curbside and parking? If folks are okay with that.
And it does look like it'll allow me to do that for this maintenance. For some reason, this $1 million, I wasn't able to reallocate to pedestrian crossings. I think it's just something with the way that the sheet is restricted right now.
Got it. But we can note in our minds, that's supposed to be for. I think question for the group is something I'm struggling with here. As I look at this, not on the maintenance bent, but on the pedestrian crossings bent generally. I asked the question about the KPIs in the other room because I have like a personal vendetta against RRFBs. I think they're very expensive and they're not the best treatment in many scenarios. Unfortunately, the KPIs for new expand improve for pedestrian crossings is solely about RRFBs. So I'm feeling a little conflicted about money in pedestrian crossings. There's only 2 million total between capital discretionary and capital SRF, which is, only 9% of the annual needs there theoretically. But I just wish we could reallocate like that 2 million, say, to reduce the number of level A's being built and massively increase the less expensive level B's being built. Wondering also thoughts, like, I personally would like to see more, pedestrian safety projects, but I'm not sure if this is the right category to put it in because of that RRFB restriction. I'm wondering if it'd be better spent in, say, neighborhood infrastructure or something along those lines.
Yeah, so a possible idea there would be to, especially on some of the more neighborhood streets where we're looking for additional pedestrian crossings, maybe on top of the paving program, because if they're reconstructing the curb ramps and they're doing paving, is there the possibility for a speed table to be included as pedestrian crossings in those areas? I mean,
That's
I'm seeing
all neighborhood
Jonathan.
infrastructure, actually. That clarifies in another sheet here that like neighborhood infrastructure is implementing traffic calming improvements, which includes crossings. It also includes speed tables, theoretically, maybe raised crosswalks at some point. So I kind of feel like getting more capital, whether discretionary or SRF, into neighborhood infrastructure would be valuable because it's very low, but I don't know where to draw from. I don't know if folks have like a strong opinion about, something else being overfunded on a capital.
I would recommend SRF. In particular, I'd recommend pulling 0.5 out of intersection infrastructure and throwing it into that neighborhood infrastructure. Because I think maybe that better fits need and also the purpose of the SRF. But, this also depends on the actual specific projects proposed being funded with that money. So
it's a good idea because, theoretically, if we have traffic signals and infrastructure currently funded at 6 million, yes, that's only 35% of its funding. But again, that's also a category with a few very expensive concepts in there, like hawk signals. So like the loss of, let's say we take $500,000 out of there, we might lose like one hawk signal, but we gain a bunch, like a huge percentage gain in neighborhood infrastructure by adding 0.5 there.
Yeah, we doubled it. Because we added more money into it.
Yeah.
So
a haircut in one is like a doubling in another there.
Yeah.
I feel like June and I have been talking a lot here. Julie, others, like, I guess, any other?
I could add just an observation. This is Gary. Indirectly, the green column, where's your total annual needs, has almost set a percentage of, or you've defined a level of requirement. And assuming that each dollar, means the same, you've also defined the percentage of the overall budget that needs to be put toward that particular item. And I'm looking specifically at traffic signals and intersection infrastructure. The policy committee
Wow.
currently is wrestling with different issues regarding intersections, and there's only 10% per year being thrown at an annual need. That doesn't make it doesn't square with me somehow. It's just
So Gary, I'm actually missing where you're getting some of the math here. If you look at the blue columns, that's the columns that say what is the percentage of the annual capital need met. Where's the 10%?
the 18.4 million for total asset combined with the $188 million requirement. That's 10%. I don't know where the 27% comes from.
I think it's, yeah, because I think this is what Riley was saying, where dollars stretch further in different categories towards the KPIs. So in this category, clearly only 10% of that annual need funding gets us towards 27% of the maintenance program needs of KPIs, and same for capital, except it's 33%. So he was just sort of saying, like, the dollar for dollar percentage doesn't always match, because sometimes in that unconstrained budget where we're like, we could theoretically just do like absolutely everything, the numbers get really high in certain categories, but small amounts of dollars in certain categories can go a long way towards meeting the percentage. So I think your point well taken, but I would note that I do think the 27% and 33% are more accounting for what we should be targeting for, as opposed to like looking at the 10% route.
Is the 21%, is that the percentage of the budget that it takes?
Of allocated funds, yeah. So it's saying like
Okay.
it's taking up 21% of all the money that we can distribute already.
Right, so that's kind of a lot.
It's huge compared to the other categories, yeah.
I mean, signals are really expensive, and
Yeah.
I would say that I'm kind of hesitant to pull too much money away from signals, because especially for more cost-effective signal upgrades, like there's a lot we can do no cost with signals with timing changes. And I mean, I'd really push that those traffic signals and intersection infrastructure, because it is such a large budget line item, that every effort be taken to choose cost-effective upgrades over really more pricey ones. I know it's probably being done on the back end, but I'll just verbalize it.
What we haven't talked about yet, I know we're almost out of time, is I was trying to keep in mind here, what are areas that we're more likely to be able to bond for or get a federal and state grant for? And I do think when we're talking about whether it's bridge repair, bridge maintenance, major multimodal projects, those very much fall into the more likely to get federal or state dollars. Bonding is harder to predict because it's actually driven by our own city and our own administration. Typically, people like to create big projects, like they'll be like, we're building a new rec center or something that's a net new capital improvement. But you can actually just package up large repairs, so or upgrades. So we could say we want to bond, let's say traffic signals and intersection infrastructure. We want to bond $40 million over the next 5 years or whatever it is to make a one-time huge leap forward on traffic signals and intersection infrastructure. So I have been trying to keep that in mind as we look at these different categories. I think some of these are easier to bond for and some of them are harder to bond for as you like go out to the voters and ask them to vote for things. So if you sort of said, hey, let's go out and say with a bond of only, I don't know, $100 million, we could finish the entire pedestrian crossings project or something like that. Like we could finish out that category, something along those lines. So we should keep in mind like what's saleable to voters as we're thinking about moving the monies around.
And I'm going to close this session so that we can all come back. Just want to make sure that we have time for that next portion. I think it's going to give us a 30-second countdown.
And this is also why I don't want to pull any money out of system planning and evaluation, because that sets us up very, very well for a lot of those projects.
Federal, state, and bonds. Yeah, yeah. That's a huge portion of the capital discretionary, but it's very valuable.
Yeah, and also we've got new state money flowing in from 230. That'll be a competitive grant program. So having those shovel-ready projects will help us access another, I want to say, $12 million pot, which isn't a lot, but it's something.
See, are we all back in the main room?
looks like Group C is coming back in right now.
Okay.
That was
sounds
so
good.
quick.
I know. If we had several more hours, we could probably spend all day doing this. But I guess before, as everyone's rejoining back to us, what are your initial reactions? Was this easy?
I think we just needed more time. It kind of was and wasn't, because you always have to think about the better good of the person, of like the actual projects themselves, like what are they servicing and how important are they, and like kind of weigh those options too. But kind of once we kind of planned a strategy, then we were able to kind of go through what we needed to go through. But it's a lot of strategy thinking.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, I think it's a tough, because you have to start to weigh trade-offs, and that's, as the DOTI staff, that's kind of what we face every day, is making those tough trade-offs between if we give money to something, we have to pull it from something else, and what's the impact of that going to be? And yeah, it's definitely challenging.
Yeah, I was, the maintenance number was so high and the others so low that I wish we could take some pay out of maintenance.
Yep.
And do deferred maintenance and put it in the other categories.
Yeah, and
we especially talked about roads, the alleys and the repaving, so.
Absolutely. And we were having that discussion too. I know some in my group wanted to take some from the maintenance, and that's locked in there. And that's actually because even in our budget, we don't necessarily have a lot of control over this. That the maintenance is a pretty set number, but I think it does speak to larger policy conversations about how we balance our maintenance need versus the need to build more infrastructure, especially because we have more people in Denver that we need to provide transportation infrastructure for, but then at the same time, we also have more people that are using our streets, which means more wear and tear. So just having that trade-off is sometimes a tough conversation. Alan, I see you had your hand up.
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to say thank you, Riley. Thank you, Dottie. This board has been asking for more specific ways to contribute to the budget without just sending general bullet pointed emails and letters. And this is really cool to get in here and have these conversations. So we really appreciate you all hearing us on that. And the other thing I just took away is that we are grossly underfunded as a city for coming anywhere near close to our goals. I think part of maybe the charge of this board is to think about potential additional revenue streams for the department, because there's no way we're going to meet our safety goals, our mobility goals, our vibrant Denver goals of having people access their city in a meaningful way. So thank you all again.
Yeah, definitely. So I wanted to just show, this is on this last tab here, this is kind of the consensus. So in each of the groups, as you are all putting in your numbers, then this was calculating on the back end, so you can kind of see what the results are. And yeah, as you can see, it looks like we wanted to fund neighborhood infrastructure to give it more, even meet more of its needs, so that we can do traffic calming. Then seeing what else we funded, it looks like protected barriers was brought up. So again, those kind of maintaining our bikeways and some of the other things that we're doing to separate our different modes. And I think continuing to look through this, as it's challenging, for any of these to meet 100%, as you can see on here. So that's what we're kind of up against, those tough decisions about making the trade-offs to see where can we potentially make more of an impact through these different investment categories. And I think it also it does become blatantly obvious where could we potentially put more of our bond resources into, or where should we really be focusing our grant resources into. And this has been kind of eye-opening for that as well. And Tinsley, look like you had your hand up. So
yeah, I just kind of want to explain a little bit of our strategy, because we took it the same, but we also took it a little bit differently. So we definitely prioritize like top 3 categories, like all of us would agree upon that need more funding. And then what we did is we kind of looked at where can we take away from, instead of trying to find like additional funding sources, where can we again take away from to to bring more money that we know where it's needed. And so I thought that that was really exciting. And the three that we definitely chose were the multi-model planning, the neighborhood infrastructure, and the transit. Because I think a lot of us can agree that there's definite more of a need now than there ever has been to up on the transit part of the budget to maintain the bus stops and also create new ones with RTD. But I just again also wanted to say that this was very interesting and exciting, and I hope you guys come back and like do this activity with us every year. It would be really great to continue giving our feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. We're excited that we have something like this to share with you, and I know that this is something that you all have been looking for a long time, so we'll continue to refine on it.
Bring more money next time.
Yes, that's what we hope to. Jake, I see you had your hand up too.
Yeah, and I guess to directly hit on Aileen's point in the chat, I think I need to be the bad guy here on the housekeeping. Riley, do you think we can wrap up by 5:50-ish? Or
Yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
5:50?
Yep. Yeah, no problem at all. And I just had a couple quick things, and then I can wrap up. So
sounds good. Unless everyone has like a unanimous, we'll be here for 12 hours. No, I'm just kidding.
No, for sure. I get it. No, one thing, what we were going to do is if we had, we ran out of time for this, was do a second exercise, and I'll just kind of explain what we did when we were kind of doing this in our leadership workshop. Is, you know, sometimes we, in our best intent to plan things out and come up with a budget, we know that things happen that weren't planned. And an example is the 16th Street Mall came out very much over budget, and so we had to use some of the money that we would have planned in this category to kind of meet the delta. And that happens all the time in our work. And so we did this as like a second exercise is, what happens if we discover dinosaur bones underneath the 16th Street Mall? It's going to take $10 million for an archaeologist to come in and kind of excavate the site. So now we only have $15 million to work with instead of 25. And how would you allocate the budget? And this is there are realities. Sometimes this happens where something comes over budget, or we have to make budget cuts, and we have to face those tough decisions. And so anyway, that was just kind of was the second point I was going to make with that exercise. But yeah, I think with our last 5 minutes that we have, just wanted to see, you know, as a group, if there's anything that's on this that you might change or that you all wanted to discuss further. And if not, then that's all that I had for you. So.
I just want to see the whole spreadsheet. I just want to have it in my hand so I can look at all the math and all the really nitty-gritty details. So that's what I'll say.
Okay.
I definitely think there's the alleys and the pavement are both somewhere where we can take at least shave a little bit off of. So
Alleys and pavement.
I would also say the bike budget surprised me. I feel like you know, there's been a lot of heavy lifting over the past like 2 years for bikes, and I feel like that amount of funding could eventually fade off a little bit, because I feel like there's so much infrastructure now, and then it'll just kind of go into like a maintenance phase and like rebuilding or building new ones. And that'll kind of potentially, I feel like, bring in more money now that some of that heavy lifting is over.
For sure. Just out of curiosity, if we were to shave some from the bike program, what might we want to reallocate it to?
Yeah, we had said the neighborhood infrastructure fund, because it can still support somewhat some of the bike projects if we needed it, depending on where they were and what they were doing.
Okay.
And so we felt like just giving more freedom to that neighborhood infrastructure budget would just help out drastically in general.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think there was completely consensus there. We had a few differing opinions on that particular one, but I think we all agreed that all of us agreed that neighborhood infrastructure, transit, pedestrian crossings were very important.
Okay. Good to know. So I'll take note of that. for just out of curiosity, in the last couple minutes, for the maintenance one, if we were to shave some off the alleys and pavement markings, any ideas like where we might reallocate that one to?
Yeah, we had some discussions on our end. We recommended putting it into curbside and parking. Logic there being keeping our especially payment systems in a state of good repair might actually bring in more revenue than we spend on it, and that can go to other priorities. So it is a net gain. And I see some of the objectives of DOTI is to become more self-funded. So that's an important thing that putting money in, it could be a total revenue generator, which I'm a big fan of, and also putting it into protective barriers.
Definitely.
Because that can serve a lot of those infrastructure needs. And also they're slightly more permanent, which I think can help with, for example, pavement markings are going to have less maintenance needs if there's barriers protecting those markings. Sure. So, yeah.
I brought this up in our group, Riley, but I think that representing the inverted pyramid and where our values in investing is really, really important, because that's our values on paper and this is our value in reality. And they're not quite one-to-one. So I think like better getting that inverted pyramid aligned to what we're funding allows us to live out our values a lot better.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just for those of you that haven't seen that, the inverted pyramid refers to that we have the pedestrians prioritized on top, and then bikes and transit, and then single occupancy vehicles on the bottom. So that's kind of, that's what Jake is saying, kind of aligning how we're thinking of our funding towards those different resources.
I put in comments, but also the multi-model system planning and evaluation could definitely use more funding, because they plan a lot and do a lot of the studies all around Denver, and if they only have funding for like 2 staff, that's a problem. So
yeah, for sure. And I brought up this point in our group too, is that's an important category, because it's important that we advance projects so that way they qualify for some of those bigger pots of money, like the like bond or grants, and bond and grants typically can't fund concept development, and so we have to rely on that funding source to be able to advance those, to develop those projects, get them ready so that they can meet some of those other funding sources.
Something I think we haven't brought up yet, sorry if I missed it, in this larger group is something our group discussed also was reducing the capital discretionary, or SRF, on traffic signals and intersection infrastructure by about $500,000 to increase the neighborhood infrastructure by that same amount, with the reasoning being that with traffic signals and intersection infrastructure, hawks are super expensive. And so if we lost like one hawk from that category, we would gain a ton in neighborhood infrastructure. Like it would be, it would cover like half of their entire request budget with the loss of like one hawk signal out of traffic signals intersection.
Yeah, that's a really great point. Well, awesome. I just wanted to say thank you so much. This was really fun for all of us to get to engage with you in this activity. And so really wanted to say that I appreciate your time here and for having me. And we'll definitely take this feedback, and this will help us as we inform our 2025 budget process. And this also is, I think, helpful for all of us to just kind of understand some of the tough decisions that we are faced with when it comes to allocating our money. And I hope that for all of you that you found this as to be a useful exercise as well. And with that, I think that's everything that I have. And so I will plan to jump off, but look forward to joining you in a future meeting.
Riley, real quick, I just want to call out you were being praised in chat. We meet in the late afternoon, so we're not always just super excited, overflowing with energy due to the time of the day that we meet, but you really extracted it out of this group. And I'm really appreciative of all the work you put into it. So thank you.
No problem. Glad I was able to do that.
Awesome.
And also
all
just
right.
a really quick thank you for everybody's flexibility, changing up from webinar to meeting to meet some of the configuration needs for this exercise. So just wanted to say, really appreciate just staying a little dynamic this afternoon, and apologize for that.
Thanks, Chris. All right. And hating to be the one that had to cut this one short, we do have our 2 items that we need to vote on today. And so Jamie mentioned the carbon footprint letter. I am trying to share it again in a slightly different view where hopefully text is bigger. But if there were any questions or concerns on this letter, wanted to cover it and then vote on it and then get to the next letter. And you all should have gotten an email copy for this letter as well so that you can pull them both up. Were there any questions or concerns or affirmations of this letter that we wanted to cover?
I will move, we accept the letter and ask that it be sent.
Awesome. Thank you, Julie.
I'll second that.
I'll
Awesome.
second.
Awesome. Let me stop sharing so I can actually see your guys' hands go up. But if you can raise your little virtual hand if you're for this letter. All right. I see 11 in favor. And then lower your hands, and those that are against can raise their hands. All right, this letter is unanimously approved. So policy committee, this is approved by the whole board of the whole. All right, hopping over into letter number 2. Let's see, Alan, do you want to introduce this one?
Yeah, I'll go real quick. If you can scroll down to some of the photos, Jake, I think it speaks it well. I'll let Jonathan talk the technical details for this, but the impetus that this came from our neighborhood RNO. We all have a lot of elders that would love more accessible sidewalks in our neighborhood in Denver. We're seeing a lot of new construction and infill, and we're not seeing essentially the high level as the city's policy of fulfilling of getting those sidewalks built out when we have new construction and major renovations. And Jonathan, feel welcome to hop in and give some more technical detail.
Yeah, I think you've covered it well. Happy to field questions for anyone who was perhaps had questions while reviewing this. But I think the core of this is we're not asking for a new policy here. We have an existing policy that just isn't being enforced. What we are asking is for an existing policy that has been on the books since 2007 to be enforced.
How fast can I move to say absolutely hell yes? I move this letter vigorously.
All right. If you all raise your hands if you're an aye on this. All right. I see 12 in favor. This is like a real legislative body. The votes are coming in at the last few seconds. All right. I counted 12. And then if there's anyone against, I got you, Aileen. I counted your real hand.
Don't forget Jamie's vote.
Sorry. Yes. So we're actually at 13 and 12 then. All right. Any opposed?
Jamie was a yes on that other one, that first one too, because that was the one he talked about.
Yeah, correct. Gary, if you'll do me a favor and change that vote from 11 to 12 to include Gary, or sorry, you're Gary. Jamie. All right. Any opposed to the letter on redevelopment? All right. Those are both unanimously approved. Thank you, board. I know that a lot of people have been working hard on those 2 letters, so glad that we can get them approved by the board as a whole. We still have a few minutes. We do have odds and ends scheduled for the last 5 minutes here. Is there any odds and ends or updates anyone on the board would like to share? Alan.
I just want to share that we are coming up on budget season. DOTI did an amazing job of facilitating the conversation today, but we do as a formal policy always send out a letter as well. So we will be having a budget committee meeting later this month. Exact day and time to be determined, but I'll email all of you all with the Zoom link to that as well. So we can even use some of the worksheets that DOTI has given us through that spreadsheet to kind of help facilitate that conversation and come up with some even more specific recommendations, which I'm really excited about, is having that as a sounding board. So just wanted to mention that as well. Thank you.
I wanted to provide a quick update. We are at the end of our term cycle. So the council and mayors are working on their appointments or have completed them, and they just need final sign-offs. And we'll have new members for our June meeting if all follows the timeline. So be ready to welcome some new faces next month. And if you're term limited out or moving on to other things, we'd like to thank you for your service to our board and appreciate everything that you've contributed. I'm sorry if I had names, I'd thank you all personally, but I do not have them at the moment. So
can I ask a
in
question
spirit.
about that? Would we have gotten a notice one way or another? Like if our
That's a good question. So I believe the city only sent updates to those board members who were at the transition. We have staggered terms. So if you didn't get one, it might be that you're on the other staggered part.
Okay.
Yeah, that's right. I did get a notice and got reappointed, but there was a notice sent to me about 3 months ago. So if you haven't gotten one, I'm sure that you're still a member and don't have to re-up.
I just wanted to say that I love this whole activity today, and I hope that, like, for other things that we need to address as a board, that we can do some more of these kind of activities where we're participating together to create some of these solutions. I hope this is what everybody was looking for. This is what I was kind of looking for. So I'm just really glad it happened.
Agreed. All right. We were over schedule all day today, but now we're not. So everyone can enjoy an extra minute in your day. And thank you all for coming with plenty of energy today. It was much appreciated. Have a good one, y'all.
Thanks, guys. Good session. See you all next month.
Night, everyone.